I found the letter the night before our wedding, taped inside the lining of my tuxedo jacket, hidden like a secret someone didn't want found until it was too late. I was alone in the hotel room, trying the jacket on one last time to make sure everything fit just right. Felt a crinkle near my ribs. I reached in, thinking it was a tag I'd missed or maybe a forgotten receipt. But it was a letter. Folded twice, with my name on the front, not in Vanessa's handwriting. The last line nearly knocked the air out of me. "You're raising my son, and she's never going to tell you." I stood there in front of the mirror, tuck still half on, hands trembling, heart thundering like a freight train through my ribs. That sentence didn't just hit me, it rewrote everything. Let me back up a little. My name's Thomas. I'm 34, a project manager from Denver. Not flashy, not wild. I drink the same coffee every morning and I have a dog named Cody who sheds like it's a full-time job. 2 years ago, I met Vanessa at a trivia night. She destroyed my team with this ridiculous knowledge of 90s boy bands, and I was hooked before the bonus round. She was warm, vibrant, always 3 steps ahead of the room. I thought she was the one. We took our time. Moved in after a year. Talked about marriage like grown-ups. When she found out she was pregnant, I was surprised, but happy. Scared, sure, but excited in a way I didn't know I could be. We hadn't been trying, but I believed in leaning into the life that finds you. We named him Noah. He had her eyes, my chin, and a smile that made every hard day feel like background noise. I proposed 6 months after he was born. On our porch, with Cody at our feet, and Noah gurgling in her arms. She said yes without hesitation. And now, this letter. I read it 4 times. Same words. Same signature. M. No full name. No explanation. Just that one haunting accusation, that I wasn't Noah's father, and that Vanessa knew. I sat on the edge of the bed, Tuck's jacket in my lap, letter burning in my hands. It was late. Our rehearsal dinner had ended just a few hours ago. Vanessa was in the suite across the hall, staying there like tradition called for. She'd seemed tense all week. Barely sleeping. Kept her phone face down. I thought it was wedding nerves. But maybe it was him. Her dress was hanging in a garment bag. Our families were already in town. Our vows were written, the cake ordered, the seats assigned. But now, nothing felt real. I kept thinking about the way Vanessa had acted lately. She jumped every time her phone buzzed. Said it was work stress. But looking back, I remembered how quickly she'd end calls. How she flinched when unknown numbers rang. She brushed off questions. Stayed vague about her past, especially when it came to her ex, Marcus. The one name she always said didn't matter anymore. The one who'd moved out of state before I came into the picture. I never met him. Didn't even have a last name. Just Marcus. And now. M. Always first name only. Never a last name. But now that letter, that signature, it clicked in a way I couldn't unsee. The tux had been tailored at a boutique she chose, her friend's family owned it. She picked it up for me just 2 days ago. Insisted on it. The woman at the shop later told me a man had come in the day before. Said he was my best man and needed to retrieve something he'd forgotten. Looked enough like me that she didn't question it. I hadn't thought twice. Until now. I stayed up all night. Didn't sleep. Didn't text her. I just sat there, running through every memory I could, hunting for cracks in the foundation we'd built together. By 5 a.m., I knew what I had to do. I slid the letter into my pocket and walked down the hall. Knocked on her door. When she opened it, hair still messy from sleep, eyes soft with that familiar look I used to love, she asked what was wrong. I didn't say anything right away. I just held up the letter. She went pale. Didn't even try to lie. And that's when I knew, it wasn't just a sick joke. It was the truth. And my world was about to split wide open. She didn't ask where I found the letter. She didn't ask what it said. Vanessa just looked at it, that folded square of paper in my hand, and everything about her changed. Her mouth opened, then closed again. And for the first time in 2 years, I saw her without a script. We stood in silence so thick it felt like the hallway itself was holding its breath. Finally, she stepped aside and let me in. No words. No fight. She sat on the edge of the bed, palms on her knees. I stayed standing. Couldn't bring myself to sit, not when everything beneath me felt like quicksand. Is it true? I asked. My voice sounded calm, but it wasn't really mine. It was the voice of a man who hasn't started breaking yet, but will. Vanessa didn't look at me when she said it. Just nodded. Once. And there it was. Confirmation. I was holding our wedding day in my hands, and it had just turned to ash. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. That would come later, maybe. Right now, my brain was sprinting, trying to close every loop, replay every memory, every first, every, I love you, every moment with Noah. The way he reached for me when he was scared. The way he said, "Dada," like it was the only word he trusted. But if he wasn't mine, who was I to him? And who was I, now? How long have you known? I asked. Vanessa closed her eyes like she needed to find the answer in the dark. Since I was pregnant, she whispered. That nearly dropped me. You knew, from the beginning? She nodded again, slower this time. I didn't know for sure, she added. Not until after he was born. I almost got a test, she admitted. But when you held him that first night, I couldn't. I wanted that moment to be real more than I wanted the truth. But deep down, I think I always did. I sat down across from her, not to be close, but to keep from falling over. My knees weren't working right. None of me was. And you weren't going to tell me? I asked. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to lose you. Lose me? I said, almost laughing. Vanessa, you already had me. I was there. Through the pregnancy. The birth. I stayed up with him when you needed sleep. I changed diapers. I sang to him. I know, she whispered. I know what you've done for him. For us. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, the letter dangling from my fingers. Who is he? I asked. The man who wrote this. She hesitated. Marcus, she said finally. We dated off and on. Before you. It was messy. I didn't say anything. Just waited. He left. Moved to Chicago. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. I didn't hear from him again, until last week. Last week? I said, snapping upright. So he sent this? She nodded. He called me. Said he was sorry. Said he wanted to meet Noah. I told him no, that it wasn't his place anymore. That you were his father. I shook my head. But he didn't accept that. So he, what? Stuffed this into my tux like some kind of bomb. Tears started to slide down her face, quiet and steady. I told him not to do anything. I didn't know he'd go that far. I swear, Thomas. But you did know the truth, I said, and stood again. And you let me build a life on a lie. She looked up at me, broken in all the ways she'd once tried to protect me from. I didn't mean for it to be a lie, she said. It just became one. Every day I didn't tell you, it got harder. And then Noah came. And you were so good with him. You loved him like he was yours. And I thought maybe that could be enough. I turned away from her. Not because I couldn't look at her, but because if I didn't, I was going to say something I'd regret. I stared out the window. The sun was starting to rise. A new day. One we were supposed to spend promising forever. Instead, we were unraveling the past. I need to know if it's true, I said finally. Legally. Medically. I need a test. Vanessa nodded without hesitation. Whatever you need. And until then, I said, turning back to her, we're not getting married. She closed her eyes. One more nod. No argument. No denial. Just that silence again. That heavy, aching silence of a woman who knew the truth was going to cost her everything. I left her sweet without another word. The hallway was empty, but I felt like the whole hotel was watching me. The groom who'd walked in with a tux, and walked out with a secret. Downstairs, I found the concierge and asked him to cancel the breakfast reservation. Then I walked into the quiet morning, tux still on, shoes clicking across the tile, letter folded in my hand like a death certificate. And for the first time since Noah was born, I didn't know who I was anymore. Not a husband. Not a father. Not yet. Just a man, walking away from a life he thought was his. I spent the rest of that morning driving nowhere. Took the long way through downtown, up toward the foothills, past the place we picked out for wedding photos. Funny how fast things unravel. Just yesterday, I was rehearsing vows I wrote by hand, now I was rehearsing how to tell our families the wedding was off. I ended up back at my place, well, our place, technically, and walked straight into the nursery. Noah's room. It smelled like lavender lotion and old baby wipes. His stuffed animals were still lined up on the shelf the way I liked to leave them. The little lion he called, Roar. The dog with the chewed-up ear. A copy of Goodnight Moon still on the rocking chair, where I'd read it the night before last. I sat down in that chair and just stopped. Didn't cry. Didn't think. Just existed. The kind of stillness you only feel when the part of your life that made the most sense suddenly feels like a question mark. For hours, I sat in silence. Trying to breathe. Trying to remember if I still had the right to love him. But the emptiness of not hearing him laugh, was louder than any logic. That boy, that beautiful little boy, was my son. Maybe not by blood. But in every other way that counted. He was mine. And now I had to decide what that meant, if it turned out I wasn't really his father. By 10 a.m., the calls started. Mother-in-law first. Confused. Polite. Asking if Vanessa was okay. Then my sister, Rebecca, sharp as ever, not buying a word of the polite script I gave her. Thomas, she said, I've seen you calm. This isn't that. What's going on? I told her I didn't have answers yet. That was the truth. The real truth. I was too raw to speak it out loud. Around noon, I got a text from Vanessa. Marcus just called again. I told him to leave us alone. He said he won't. No apology. No, I miss you. Just facts. And that's when I realized, she was scared. Not just of losing me. Of him. I called her, but it went to voicemail. Called again. Same thing. Then I remembered something. Our wedding planner had mentioned Vanessa wanted to use a different tux shop than we'd originally booked. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Said her friend's boutique had better tailoring. What if that was the moment Marcus got access to the jacket? I called the shop. Woman who answered was chipper, said she remembered Vanessa. I asked if a man named Marcus ever came by. Her tone shifted. I'm not supposed to talk about clients. I cut her off. I'm the groom. Or. I was. I found a letter in my jacket. Silence. Then she sighed. Yes. He dropped by. Said he was your best man, forgot something. Looked enough like you I didn't question it. I'm so sorry. That was all I needed to hear. Marcus wasn't just sending messages from a distance. He was here. In Denver. Close enough to touch the jacket I'd planned to wear while pledging the rest of my life. I tried Vanessa again. No answer. So I went to her. Back at the hotel, her room was open when I knocked. She looked like she hadn't moved all day. Still in her robe. Hair tied back. Noah was asleep on the bed, curled against a pillow. She barely looked up when I walked in. He's calling me every hour, she said. Different numbers. He says I owe him. I sat on the chair across from her. What does that mean? She didn't answer right away. Then, he thinks I lied to him, too. About Noah. About what I wanted. About choosing you. But you did choose me, I said quietly. Or did you? Her eyes brimmed with tears. I did. I do. But it was a choice built on a lie. And now I don't know if that means it's all poisoned. I looked at her. And for the first time since this began, I saw the guilt hadn't come from fear of losing me. It came from realizing she might have broken the one thing she truly wanted. We sat in silence, both of us staring at our son, my son, asleep in a tangle of blankets and stuffed animals. He still thinks I'm his dad, I whispered. You are, she said, without hesitation. In every way that matters. Maybe, I said. But if Marcus keeps pushing, if he wants to take it further. He won't, she said sharply. I won't let him. And what if he does? She looked at me, finally, and for the first time in days, she didn't look like the version of herself she showed to the world. She looked scared. Raw. Real. I'll fight him, she said. We'll fight him. I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know what we meant anymore. That night, I drove to Rebecca's. Told her everything. Every word. She listened, didn't interrupt, didn't blink. Then she poured 2 glasses of wine and said, we're getting a DNA test. And then, if it turns out Noah's not biologically yours, you're going to decide what kind of man you want to be. Not what kind of man Marcus expects. I nodded. Because she was right. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about punishment. It was about Noah. The boy who called me dad. And what kind of father I'd be, even if I wasn't the one who made him. The envelope came 3 days later. Plain white, no logo. The kind that could hold anything, a receipt, a bill, a goodbye. But for me, it held something heavier than all of that. I picked it up off the porch with hands that didn't feel like mine. Sat down at the kitchen table. Stared at it. Vanessa was across from me. Silent. Pale. Her hands hadn't stopped fidgeting since the test was sent. She wanted to open it with me, but she didn't ask. She knew that wasn't hers to ask for anymore. I opened it. One sentence, printed in black ink. Probability of paternity, 0%. I didn't say anything. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Just stared at the page like it might suddenly change if I looked long enough. Vanessa whispered something, I think it was my name, but it didn't reach me. Not fully. Because that was it. The final answer. I wasn't Noah's biological father. And yet, the moment I read that line, my brain did something strange. It didn't go to Marcus. Didn't go to anger, or betrayal, or fists slamming into drywall. It went to Noah. To the first time he fell asleep on my chest. To the way he waddled to the front door when I got home. To the time he cried through the night and I sang, Hey Jude, until my throat was raw and he finally drifted off. I'd loved that boy with a part of myself I didn't even know existed. And now, some ink on a page was telling me that love didn't come from blood. It came from choice. I stood up and walked into his room. Noah was in his crib, cheeks flushed with sleep. Thumb half in his mouth. Breathing soft and slow, the way only children do, like the world's never given them a reason not to trust it. I sat down next to him. Didn't cry. Didn't touch him. Just watched. Because some part of me needed to remember this. To anchor myself before the rest of my life tried to pull me under. Vanessa came to the doorway, eyes swollen, arms crossed like she didn't know if she was welcome anymore. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I didn't answer. Not right away. I finally stood and turned to her. "You should have told me." She nodded. "I know. I would have stayed," I said. "Maybe not as your fiancé. Maybe not as your husband. But as his father. I would have stayed." Her voice cracked. "Would you still?" I didn't know how to answer that. Because the truth was, I didn't know yet. Not because I didn't love Noah. But because everything else was broken, and I didn't know if I could live in a house built on cracks without falling through them every single day. I left that night. Didn't pack a bag. Just drove. Ended up at Rebecca's again. Told her everything. Handed her the test results. She looked at me like I'd just walked out of a burning building. "What now?" she asked. I sat down at her kitchen table. The same spot where we'd played cards as kids. Where our dad once showed me how to tie a tie for homecoming. Where my mother told me, before she passed, that I was always going to be someone people leaned on. And now? I didn't feel like someone anyone should lean on. "I don't know," I said. "I don't want to walk away from Noah. But I don't know if I can keep pretending like none of this matters." Rebecca was quiet for a while. Then she reached for a box in the cabinet. Photos. Old ones. Of us as kids. Her, me, our parents. She pulled one out. It was me, holding her son, my nephew, the day he was born. Big grin, messy hair, baby swaddled in blue. "He's not yours either," she said softly. "But you'd burn down the world for him, wouldn't you?" I nodded. She set the photo down. "You don't have to decide today," she said. "But don't walk away from love just because it didn't arrive the way you expected." I stayed in that guest room for 2 more nights. Slept like a man in a different life, because that's what I was now. Then Vanessa called. Said Marcus had shown up. Uninvited. And he wanted to talk. She was scared. And for the first time since that letter fell out of my jacket. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was protective. Because the man who wrote that letter. He might have made the child. But he sure as hell wasn't going to come back now and act like that earned him anything. Especially not my son. When I pulled into the driveway, Marcus was already on the porch. Leather jacket, arms crossed, looking like he had every right to be there. He didn't. Vanessa opened the door before I knocked. Her face was pale, unreadable. She didn't speak. Just stepped aside. Marcus followed me in. For a long moment, we stood in the living room where Noah took his first steps, the 3 of us, orbiting the same quiet, broken center. He finally spoke. "I didn't come here to fight." I nodded. "Then maybe don't sneak letters into a man's tuxedo the night before his wedding." He flinched. Slightly. "I didn't know how else to reach you." Vanessa wouldn't talk. "You deserve to know." I stepped closer. "No. You didn't do this for me. You did it because you couldn't stand that someone else was doing your job. I didn't even know he existed." I turned to Vanessa. She didn't deny it. So that much, at least, was true. Still didn't make him a father. "I want to be part of his life," Marcus said. Vanessa's voice was low. "That's not how this works. You don't get to show up now and expect a seat at the table. I'm his father." "No," I said. You're his biological father. There's a difference. He pointed to a photo on the wall. Noah's second birthday. Me holding him up like a trophy and grinning like a fool. Does he know? Not yet. I'd like to meet him. Not today. I stepped in front of him. You want to be in his life? You do it the right way. Consistently. Respectfully. No more ambushes. And you accept that DNA doesn't make you a dad. He didn't argue. He just left, like he'd realized showing up was going to be a lot easier than staying. A week later, he sent a letter. Said he still hoped to talk. That he'd wait until we were ready. I never wrote back. Not because I hated him. But because none of this was about him anymore. That night, I stayed. Not for Vanessa. For Noah. We sat quietly on the couch after he went to sleep. The space between us felt like miles. She handed me a mug of tea, a gesture from another lifetime. I know I can't ask you to forgive me, she said. But thank you, for standing up for him. I didn't look at her. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for him. Because one of us needs to show him what the word father really means. She nodded. Said nothing else. And I realized I didn't need a wedding to be his dad. I just needed to keep showing up. Every day. Without needing to be chosen back. A few weeks passed. No dramatic storm. No final showdown. Just, the slow, steady work of figuring out what stays after the dust settles. Vanessa and I called off the wedding officially. Told family. Cancelled vendors. No one asked for details. Maybe they sensed it was deeper than cold feet. Maybe they saw the look in my eyes, that quiet, heavy kind of grief that doesn't come from heartbreak, but from betrayal you're still trying to make peace with. We moved into separate places. She kept the house, mostly for Noah's sake. I found a small apartment not far away. Nothing fancy. Just enough space for a second crib and a stack of bedtime books. We worked out a schedule. No lawyers. Just trust, what was left of it. Noah didn't ask questions, not in the way adults do. But he knew something had changed. He clung tighter when I picked him up. Needed more lullabies at night. Spoke my name in half whispers like he was afraid it might disappear. He still called me Dad. And I never corrected him. The first time Marcus tried to reach out again, it was through a letter. Not in a tux this time, just a plain envelope in the mailbox. Said he was sorry. Said he wanted to do the right thing. That he'd back off until we were ready. I didn't respond. Not because I hated him. But because this wasn't about him. This was about Noah. And about the man I wanted to be for him. A month later, we were at the park, just the two of us. He was chasing pigeons like they were made of candy and I was watching from the bench, sipping lukewarm coffee, feeling more like a ghost than a father. Then, out of nowhere, he turned and ran back to me. Climbed into my lap. Pressed his forehead to mine. And whispered, "I missed you, Daddy." That broke something in me. And rebuilt it, all at once. Because it hit me, this little boy didn't care about paternity tests or bloodlines. He didn't care about who walked away or who came back too late. He only knew one thing. When he cried, I came. When he reached, I lifted. When he said, "Dad," I answered. That night, I told Vanessa I was all in, not with her, not yet, maybe not ever. But with him. Noah. I didn't want to be part-time. I didn't want holidays and shared calendars. I wanted to be there. Always. For the nightmares. For the giggles. For the first day of preschool and the last day of braces. She said yes. With tears. And relief. And the kind of gratitude that doesn't fit into words. So we set new rules. Drew new maps. Rebuilt the foundation, this time, honest and hard-earned. Some days still ache. Some mornings I wake up and forget that my last name isn't on his birth certificate. But when he wraps his arms around my neck and says he loves me, all the way to the moon and back, it doesn't matter. Because I chose him. And he, in his small, unknowing way, keeps choosing me. No rings. No aisle. No tucks. But every night, I tuck him in. And every morning, he calls me Dad. And that's the only vow that ever really mattered.